They will ask why. Why did they do that? Why am I not doing it for the next generation? And that will cascade down the years. You and I, this podcast is probably going to be gone in 10 years. It'll be undiscoverable in 50, and our names will not be shining there in 100 years. But the impact we make and the impact that cascades down, that is why we do this.
Hi, and welcome to 5 Random Questions, the show with unexpected questions and unfiltered answers. I'm your host, Danny Brown, and each week I'll be asking my guests 5 questions created by a random question generator. The guest has no idea what the questions are, and neither do I, which means this could go either way. So sit back, relax, and let's dive into this week's episode. Today's guest is Ewan Spence. Ewan is a freelance broadcaster and journalist, and has been the UK radio commentator for Junior Eurovision since 2013, and a US radio commentator for the Eurovision Song Contest since 2018. As Scotland's first podcaster, he was nominated for a BAFTA under Best New Creative Media category in 2005. Ewan co-founded Eurovision Insight in 2010, and under his editorship, it has grown to become an influential force in the world of the Eurovision Song Contest. He hosts its weekly Insight News podcast, the annual Juke Box Jury review show, and the daily coverage from backstage at the Song Contest every May. So Ewan, welcome to 5 Random Questions.
Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, as my cliched intro is done for 25 years now. There we go. Yes, hello, have the normal introduction. Everybody who's heard me before now feels comfortable.
Exactly. It's funny, I used to do that intro when I did the In and Around podcasting show with my colleague over at Captivate, Mark Asquith. That was like what we did was good evening, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Wasn't that? It was a live stream we used to do Captivate. Anywho, went off a little tangent there, but I hear you there. You've got to be there for all your audience, right?
What is you definitely have to be, but I'm also wondering what's the over-under on us going off on a tangent in this podcast.
Oh, well, we've already gone, mate. So didn't even get a minute into the introduction there, but it's all good. And being from the UK myself, I've been away from the UK for years, but I grew up with the Eurovision Song Contest. And it was always a huge part of me as a young lad and a young man back in the UK before I did leave. For obviously Europeans, Brits, etc., it's a very well-known and much beloved, sometimes much maligned institution. But for anybody else, North Americans, Australians, anybody that doesn't know what the Eurovision is, what is that in like a little 10,000-foot nutshell?
I'm pretty sure most of Australia gets Eurovision as well.
Oh, cool.
So they've entered for the last 11 years. They've broadcasted it since 1980, and because they have such a large first, second, third generation immigrants, you'll find the Greek quarters of the major cities all ready and getting ready to vote and doing all of that. But essentially, it's the most stupidest idea in the world that would never get past a pitch stage in modern television. Each broadcaster, one from each country, chooses a 3-minute song. They send it to an arena somewhere in Europe. They spend millions and millions of pounds doing this great big production that tests new technology and broadcasts all of this music, and then everybody who's watching decides what the best song is with no criteria judgment whatsoever, and whoever wins it has to host the shenanigans the year after.
And you mentioned, shenanigans, I feel, was a great description for the contest, because it is very much, if you've grown up, watching it from its early days, and like my early times watching it was probably the early 70s. So I remember ABBA winning in 74, for example, Daniel O'Donnell winning.
Just want to say, 1974, the Netherlands were robbed. Yeah, if de Gaulle hadn't died the week before and France had still entered, the Dutch would have beaten ABBA. So,
that is first controversy of the episode. I love it. But it's one of these things that, like you said it yourself, mate. It's not something you would ever expect to be a success, but it's been gone for decades. And I mentioned myself that it's much loved, but it can also be much maligned. Do you feel it's gotten less maligned and people are accepting and respecting it more now, or does it still got that sort of Terry Wogan joke feel kind to it? Or
I'm for or outside of the UK audience, we should know that Terry Wogan was DJ with BBC and a television host, and certainly took quite a wry and ironic look at the contest. I think he always said that if there's a duck on stage, you have to go, there's a duck on stage. But to a later degree, you start to get just a little bit too acidic, and he would complain that the duck was coming over to the UK and taking everybody's jobs. So I think that Eurovision reflects the broadcaster that is broadcasting it. So, for example, the UK has always been very sort of, we've got much better music industry. We'll just send Black Lace to you in 1979. But then there are other countries which it's not only just deadly seriousness, it is an important part of their psyche. So, for example, when the Berlin Wall fell, and the wall of communism waved back, and you had all of these Eastern European countries who are now countries in their own right, and they ran to the contest. They were like, we want our 3 minutes, because if Estonia is on stage at Eurovision, we're Estonia. We're a country. We've made it. When you're talking about in those Warsaw Pact countries in the 70s and 80s, people were trading blank tapes of the Eurovision Song Contest because they were both illicit material and what was available in the West. It was seen as a shining beacon to those countries. But in terms of controversy, obviously, right now, there are some huge issues around the contest. When you have something that is broadcast around the world, and each of those performers represents a broadcaster but is underneath the flag of their country, then the geopolitical situations around the world, and those situations are beyond the scope of this podcast, they have an impact on the contest. So can it be seen as quite kitsch? Yes. Can it be seen as a serious musical endeavour? Yes. Can it be seen to holding up a mirror to society, and society does not like the reflection that is cast back on it? It is all that and more.
No, I hear you. I'm, like I mentioned, I'm not in the UK anymore, but I still keep up to what's happening in the UK, and obviously globally. My wife calls me her news beacon because she doesn't want to watch the news or anything. And you're right, it's like there's a lot of discussion about our country's going to boycott the next Eurovision because of what's happening geopolitically, etc. So completely hear you, and it makes sense that smaller countries that have become standalone countries and got independence, etc., revere the fact that they're in there and want to solidify their place as a new country, as a respected country. So I completely hear that. And it's one of these things, if you've never watched it, I do implore you to watch it, because there's always at least one act that just is completely out of left field and you think, this is what Eurovision's all about.
And the great thing about that is, if we compare notes of the 26 songs that make it to the Saturday Night Grand Final, I reckon that song's a bit out there. Everybody would choose a different song. All of those songs, for one person, it'd be like, that Portuguese song is so out there. And others would just go, yeah, they're just celebrating the Carnation Revolution. This is a piece of important history for Portugal. And others would just go, no, it's definitely out there, but it's not out there as much as Finland. I would just go, well, yeah, that's just standard Finnish thrash metal with a band called Steel Reinforced Concrete. Yep, they do that all the time. Next. And that is the delight of music, that everybody can love different things. It's part of the joy of the contest over its 70 editions, which is there is no genre limitation. Really, the only limitation is 3 minutes, 6 people on stage, and away you go. But, that's the same as podcasts. What could be one person's podcast as being completely and utterly out there, it's somebody else going, yeah, that's what we talk about at university, and that's what we do all the time. And I think that while the Eurovision Song Contest is one to many, the strength of podcasting has always been not necessarily one-to-one, because we all like our audience, but it's the fact that individuals can do many to many. It's that you can individually do one to many. What would require hundreds of thousands, if not millions of pounds or euros or dollars or Canadian dollars invested in hardware, you no longer have that. I think that's one of the things that attracted me back in 2004, 2005. It's just like, I've got a laptop, I've got a basic mixing desk. You don't even need the mixing desk, to be honest, but it was there. And that gateway opened up, and I was so happy to run right through it. No,
100%. And I completely, I could talk you on a completely different show in a different episode about podcasting until the cows come home. But, Mr. Spence, we do have you here to put you on the random questions hot seat. So if you're ready, I shall bring up the random question generator and we'll see what questions we have for you this week. Alrighty, this is a fine one to open up proceedings with. Question number 1, Ewan. If you could invent a holiday, what would it be?
The thing about holidays is they're all individual. Yes, everybody has a summer holiday, but summer holidays go to different places. It might be Universal Orlando, it might be a bus to Greece, it might be down to the pier at Margate, or maybe you mean Saints holidays. Actually, what I think I want here is the holiday that was invented by Billy Connolly. Now, Billy Connolly is a stand-up comedian from Glasgow. I'm pretty sure that he's known worldwide. But if not, you just go onto YouTube, find some clips. He's been performing since the very early 1970s. Very thick Scottish humour, very improvisational. And if you've experienced him, you will know what I mean. And if you haven't, then you're in for an absolute treat. But Billy Connolly always said that when he was working, he originally worked in the shipyards, that when he worked in the shipyards, he always made sure that one of his holidays was his birthday. He would always take his birthday off. And that's the holiday I would make. It would just, in the same way that your standard contract says you get Christmas, you get New Year, you get the bank holidays, it would be part of employment law that you get your birthday off. Now, okay, if you want to do that in lieu or anything, well, you know, if you've got one of those unscrupulous employers that go, oh, you have to be in, we'll give you a day in lieu. No. You get your birthday off because that is a holiday. It's personal to you. It can mean something, whether that's just having a lie-in in bed, whether that's going out for a longer walk, whether you look forward to those years when your birthday's on a Friday or a Monday and you go, hey, long weekend. I think that everybody just taking that time for themselves is a present and is a gift, and that should be mandated by law.
I like that. I know there's been some businesses recently, and I say recently, the last, say, 5, maybe 10 years, that I've noticed that they will include, you get paid time off on your birthday. And I've seen that it's not so much larger corporations because they don't want you to, to have time to yourself, but certainly smaller businesses, startups, SaaS companies, etc., very much geared towards, work-life balance and the health and well-being of their employees. One thing I'm curious about, and I like the idea of taking your birthday as a stat day. There are some people, and whether it's right or wrong, I'm not here to judge, but there are some people understandably don't like birthdays because at times it can remind them that they're getting older, and as you get to a certain age, you start to think more about your own mortality, what you've done, what you've not done, etc. And I feel you've covered it with saying you can do what you want on that day. But for people that may not celebrate their birthdays because of these very reasons, what would you say would maybe be an alternative for them possibly?
I mean, the obvious answer and counter, I guess, here is Christmas. Some people don't celebrate Christmas, but you will still have those large offices closed down for the holidays. So there's already precedent of you're given a holiday for something that you don't do. So you do have the in lieu. You do have the options for that. And yes, mandating everybody off is probably slightly too left-wing for most people. But I think that that's a situation where it's individual choice. You can do what you want on that day. You get it off. I mean, you could just maybe tell your work that your birthday's a different day. You could just go, I celebrate my birthday the week before my actual birthday because that's when my mother went into labour. So I have to celebrate it 7 days beforehand. So there you go. You're getting your... Well, how about we change it? You have to nominate a birthday day.
I like that.
So you might want to take you might want to be guaranteed your wedding anniversary off, or then the time that Scotland won the World Cup. This is a fictional podcast, obviously. We will go out on goal difference to Paraguay, I think is Moldova or something like that. Yes. Yes. Scotland, rubbish at maths until you ask us to calculate goal difference. We're very good at that. So maybe we should change it very slightly away from Connolly's original idea and make it you're allowed to nominate a birthday celebration day holiday, but it's still going to be called the Billy birthday rule.
The Billy birthday. I like that. No, and I like the fact that you, like as you mentioned, and even the idea a week early because that's when your mum went into labour. That's also giving thanks to your mum for,
I mean, your mum won't want to be reminded of it.
Well, yeah, exactly. We've got 2 teens now. Our daughter's 14. She just had her birthday yesterday, 14th birthday. Our son will be 16 in May. So we've been there. We know the joys that you have as a parent. So I hear that. But I do like that. And I mean, that's a nice one to ease into the random questions for today. So on that note then, let's have a look at what question number 2 is. Okay, I'm going to go with this. It has been up before with other guests, but I feel this follows on a little bit nicely from your first question. So question number 2, Ewan, describe your perfect day.
Apart from avoiding the obvious pun into the Lou Reed song, I think that's tough. And I think that's a tough one to answer because I like difference. I like change. I like a lot of normality as well. So I can tell you right now, wherever it is, I'm going to wake up in the morning. It's going to be cereal. It's going to be 2 slices of toast, and it's going to be a really big cup of tea for breakfast. But at the same time, it may also be, you know what, we're just going to make pancakes as a family. So, and you know, and if it's a weekday, it'll be bran flakes, and if it's a Saturday, Sunday, it's going to be honey nut cornflakes. But a lot of my life is both regularity, but a lot of it is also going away to do silly things, or things that people look at me and just go, really? Like backstage at the Eurovision Song Contest. You know, I started doing that in 2009 in Moscow. And to me, that is a completely regular thing that's done every year, certainly up until the pandemic. But to others, it's just like the most amazing, unique, weird thing in the world. I do baseball commentary in Scotland. Now, to me, it's just like, yeah, we do baseball commentary. For everyone else, it's going, but it's in Scotland. So, you know, to me, what is just a nice thing to do on a day can be just both really out there or really sensible. It's a bit like going back to music, going back to podcasting. And I enjoy so many different things that to go, what's your perfect day is like asking, what's the weather outside? You know, do I have bran flakes or do I have honey nut cornflakes? Straight away, it's just like, I can't get past the defining of breakfast. So I think it has to be a much more emotional answer. It has to be something that quietly challenges me. Not enough that I get frustrated, but something that puts me into a zone where I'm learning, where I'm doing, where I'm experiencing. It has to be something, like, it's probably going to be something showy. I do a lot of stuff writing for people to read. I do a lot of stuff talking with people to listen. I rarely do video because I don't want to burn anybody's eyes out. And the old joke of I've got a great face for podcasting. Scotland's first podcaster agrees. This is the rule. It's set all the way through. The only Scottish person you're allowed to watching a podcast is David Tennant. And believe me, you have a wide choice of podcasts to choose from. So it is going to be something showy like that. I guess it's going to be like the next step up in something that I do. A bigger podcast, a live podcast, a live commentary in the next tier up in sport, a larger venue. So it's going to be something like that, of something that I do, but taken one more step. But I'm be struggling to actually say which one. That's like a, you know, if you're flying Southwest Airlines and the oxygen mask drops, you put it on yourself first and then you choose which child you love the most. And it's only in those moments that you realize, oh, I do have a favorite.
I've never thought of it that way, but yeah, that would be interesting to like have your both kids either side of you. Okay, you're first. Here you go. But I'm wondering then, because obviously you've got a varied, you know, professional background and what you do professionally as well as, you know, personally as well. So yeah, let's see, the Eurovision's held in France and the World Cup is held in France. I think it's actually maybe in France in 2030. I could be wrong. I don't know where it is. But a bigger live stage, maybe the winner of the contest performs live at the opening ceremony of the World Cup final, and you're there presenting both the winners, and you're also expanding from baseball, which is strange for Scotsmen to be talking about, but expanding from baseball into football, the lovely game, the global game, and it's our beloved Scotland that's in the final against Brazil. Maybe that's, you know, and we win, which, I mean, it's not a realistic perfect day, but it could be a good day to spend and mix up things.
Curiously enough, and you go there on baseball is I'm not actually that much of a football fan. Most of my sport love is baseball, has been for probably about 18 years now. And sport-wise, for a long time, it was Formula One. Formula One, let's just say that the incident in Abu Dhabi, and people who follow Formula One will know the one I mean, just left a little bit of a bad taste in the mouth, and I've kind of fallen a little bit out of love with that. So, sports-wise, it really kind of just sits down now at the hardball. The American football, if it's a Sunday night and it's on, I will put it on. But other than that, my sports aren't really the traditional Scottish ones.
Okay, well, will we be watching the Super Bowl later this
Oh, still be watching the Super Bowl.
You're still watching that, yeah.
And the great thing I love with the Super Bowl is whenever you go onto what was Twitter, I suspect Blue Sky will be doing this, and everybody does advert watch. Have you seen advert watch go through? And everybody talks about what's going on in the big car and the Geico and everything else. And I love doing advert watch with the UK hashtag, and it's usually like Club 55 holidays, car insurance, sign up for life insurance and we'll send you this free pen. The real big hitters of the advertising industry. Jet2 holidays.
I remember the UK. I mean, I've not seen UK ads, at least in the Super Bowl for a while. I don't really watch the Super Bowl. I watch it because of the halftime shows. I always enjoy the halftime shows. And I remember the year when Bruno Mars was invited, and there was so many people asking, why is he? He's like just a pop star. He can't sing, can't play. And then he blew a lot of doubters away. I'm curious about this year's, for various reasons, but I'm curious about how this year's is going to go down with both the opening act, the main act, etc. It'll be an interesting halftime show. I'm curious how they'll censor that if need be.
I'm sure somebody will be hovering over the dump button to break the broadcast in 30 seconds. I suspect with a lot of those, what they'll do is they'll have a lot of inserts recorded from the dress rehearsal, and if something does happen, they'll just switch the tape over. But yeah, somebody would have to make that call very, very quickly and with a huge amount of confidence, and that would not be my perfect day. Hovering over the dump button at, I've forgotten the artist's name, so for example, Bob Vylan at Glastonbury, do you hit the dump button or not? No, yeah, you're too late, you've missed it. Welcome to the front page of the tabloids.
It's going to be interesting, and like I say, I do enjoy the halftime shows. I've watched Lady Gaga. Bruno Mars is still one of my favourites, to be honest. And I love
Can't beat Prince. You cannot beat
Prince. Yeah, In the Rain, classic. You know, and he continued to play even though it was like a horrible, horrible weather situation for him. So yeah, I will be watching. I'll try to be watching a halftime show, and I'll look out for you on the old Twitter. I'm not on Twitter anymore. Haven't been for years, but
I haven't been for years either. Over on Blue Sky here.
Oh, there you go. I'll look out for any live stuff that you're doing on Blue Sky, etc. But okay, so not quite a perfect day and completely understandable. So let's see then if we can maybe get a perfect question for question number 3. Okay, question 3. What was your favourite children's book?
It's one of those ones where I don't think I can narrow it down. So I'm just going to name a few that spring to mind and then let the host work out what the follow-up question is going to be. But the one thing that I remember about books when you bring this question up is the library. I absolutely adored going to the library growing up. I grew up in a mining village called Cowdenbeath, which is in the Guinness Book of World Records for the most run of games of football at home without victory. So I'm very Scottish, very on point. So I had the library card there, but I also had the library card for Dumfriesman, which is the next town over. And they were like the huge central library for all of Fife, which was the region. And I could just go in there and just sit. Because once you got to 11 years old, you were allowed to have 2 books out of the adult side, as well as your 4 books out of the children's side. And I was straight in, voracious reader. And, you know, there are still books that I can pick up now and go, I read this 40 years ago, and it still has echoes. So look, I'll give you some of the books that come to mind. One of them is the Kingfisher Pocket Book of Magic, which was by Peter Eldon. And it was just a book of magic tricks and how to perform them. I mean, people are probably familiar with that sort of style of book. But this was not only was it geared towards a sort of young, 11 to 13-year-old group, but it had some really, really, what I now realize are complicated effects. So there's a magic act called Out of This World by Paul Curry. Now, it was in this book, and it took me a long time, doing magic as a hobby further on to realize, oh, hold on, I learned this trick when I was 11. And it's an absolutely stunning trick. And the book was full of them. So that one and Royal Road to Card Magic, which is a much more traditional piece on how to learn how to do card magic. Okay, so that has to be there. There's a book called Heroes, which is basically a narrative of the space race between America and Russia. And the cover has Bruce McCandless, who's like the first free-floating astronaut in a jetpack out the space shuttle. It's just him in black. And I loved space and planes, and I still do. And that was the comfort book, because it went through all the missions. It gave you a rough idea of them. Not in a huge amount of enough depth for a teenager. Again, young teenager, probably this would be about 14 years old. So enough depth and enough bite to spark the knowledge, but enough that if you go out and read more, you'll find more of the story. The great thing about it nowadays is you can find these books and put them on the bookshelves here. Talked about the library there, but there was another place that I loved about books, and that was a little second-hand bookstore in the shopping centre in Kirkcaldy, which is another town that's close by. And it was like a charity bookshop. It was like £1 you can get 2 books out of this box or 3 books out of this one. And again, we would go shopping, and my mum would just go like, normally you would think you'd get some money and go to the sweet shop and get some candy and get some chocolate and stuff. No, it'd be like, there's £1, go to the bookshop, I'll get you in half an hour. And I bought so many books in there because just reading. So like, I got a complete collection of the James Bond Pan books. Were they favourite books? They were then. Nowadays you look at them and just go, wow, that's so problematic. That's so wrong. But at that point they were comfort reads, and to a certain extent now they still are. The Finding Fantasy books, where like, do you want to investigate the cave, turn to page 12. If you want to go and play the xylophone, turn to page 714. Those were wonderful. The early Doctor Who novels, Terrance Dicks. Now, he was again, script writer. But in the 70s and 80s, you didn't have home video. You couldn't watch old episodes of Doctor Who. Once they were broadcast on the television, that was it. They were done. Except the target book of novelizations existed. These are like 128 pages, 12 chapters, so 3 chapters per episode. The Doctor Who stories were generally 4-part episodes. Nowadays, when I look at online and you see, recaps going through on websites, these books, the target books, Terrance Dicks and the rest of the authors for Doctor Who, and also the James Blish Star Trek novels, which were actually, they were all just essentially recaps of these TV shows. But when you didn't have video, when you didn't have anything, when these were the cultural memory, Peter Davison is, for many people, the 5th Doctor, but for people my age, he's the Doctor with the old young face. Tom Baker is the one who is all teeth and curls, because that's how they were described in these books. So, what was your favourite children's book? All of them. Just let children read, whether it's comics or annuals or pamphlets, let them read, because reading should be joyous. Reading should not be a chore. So don't make it a chore for children or anybody. Will they graduate to bigger and better books and more complicated stuff? Maybe. Maybe they'll just stay on comics and read 2000 AD. And when you're looking at the ideas of Judge Dredd and Judge, Jury and Executioner being on the streets dispensing intense justice immediately under a fascist system, you just go, oh, hold on a second. Maybe 2000 AD was trying to tell us something 40 years ago. Let people read. Simple as that.
No, it's interesting. Like when I could feel your struggle trying to identify your favourite book. I know if I got asked that question, I'd probably be the same as you, mate. I'd be thinking of different books that, I really enjoyed. We had a sci-fi bookstore. So I saw Star Wars when I was 8 originally, when it first came out back in 77, 78, 8, 9-year-old. And it was a sci-fi bookstore in the middle of Edinburgh, where on Princess Street, or just before Princess Street, sorry, where I used to live. So I'd go there every week at the weekend. My mum would take me, or when I got a little bit older, I'd get the bus, hop on off, go there, pick up some comics, go to the Commonwealth Pool, sit down, get a Coke and then a sandwich or whatever, start reading there. But it's funny you mentioned that, just not funny. I completely agree with you. It's just like kids read. During the lockdown, our son got into a really good habit of getting books to read. And one of the ones that he got was a really abridged version of an early part of Muhammad Ali's life, when he was still Cassius Clay before he became Muhammad Ali. And it kind of touched on the reason for, the Vietnam draft, what he went through, getting stripped his titles, and it gave a little spark of an idea as to what happened. And it left my son wanting more details. So he then started researching online. He went to the local library where we lived beforehand and got more books, like the big hefty tomes as well, and really understood what Ali went through, and he wouldn't have known that if he was turned off by that original book, which is just it's like a typical kid's book. It's got a cartoon version of Ali on the front. It's maybe, 20 pages tops. So not in depth. And I've got a picture of my son on the chair, really deep into this, and then, further on into books. So like I say, you can't force, kids. Kids will pick their own favourite books, right? And I love the fact that you've got so many different ones. And, the Choose Your Own Adventure books with Steve Livingston and that, it's like, they were times, mate. You mentioned like the, Choose Your Own Adventure. Were you ever tempted? Because I tried that once to make my own book where you'd go to page 17. If you did this, you can go to page 31 if you did this. And it ended up me having like a big sheet and I lost track. I couldn't make my own. It was just too much work to try and make my own. Do you ever get tempted to do that, or do you just enjoy reading them and going on that adventure?
Not on the book as such, but one of the other books that had a huge influence on me was an Input magazine, which was a part work which is available over 52 issues every 2 weeks from your local newsagent, which would build up to a collection. And this would be Marshall Cavendish 1982-1983. And it was the rudiments of computer programming. It was essentially a basic language course over 2 years. And the end of volume 1 over 4 weeks was how to program your own adventure game, as in go north, eat tiger, get bone, kill jester. And it's like, because it's all open, it said, right, okay, we've shown you how to do this one. Now you can go away and change it yourself. So there is somewhere on a magnetic tape, lost to time probably, a tiny 12-room adventure game written by me. So yes, I did give it a go, but I cheated. I used a computer.
Yeah, well, that was far above what I could have done. I still can't code. I'm a copy-paste guy, so if I have to put something on a website, I'll grab some HTML and then drop that and probably break it.
I was good in programming right till about 2003, 2004, and at that point they changed how phones worked, and then I'm like, that's it, I'm out, this is as far as I can go. I do have when I occasionally do Twitch, I do have a lovely Twitch splash screen and programmed and everything, but it actually runs on a ZX Spectrum emulator. So I've got a ZX Spectrum driving the screens that I use when I go on Twitch.
That is amazing. And for our younger listeners, I will leave a link to the ZX Spectrum wiki page or something, so you know exactly what.
Essentially, it was a Nintendo Entertainment System, but in Europe, but we could program it. And if it wasn't for the ZX Spectrum, there wouldn't have been a Miami Vice game, which meant that Denton Designs wouldn't have seen it, which means they wouldn't have written the very first Grand Theft Auto top-down, which means you would not have had Grand Theft Auto without this computer. And Nintendo can't say that about their system.
I like it. Extra controversy through the episode.
It's not controversy, it's true.
And I can't even say the word. That's what I like about it. But this is why I like having, guests with so many different takes on this podcast, because stuff like this. So yeah, I will definitely leave a link to that. But yeah, I completely agree as well. ZX it's a beast. And that's Sinclair, right? If I remember. Was it Sinclair ZX? Yeah, it was, yeah. So I will leave a link to that in episode show notes, so be sure to have a look at them when you're looking to find out more about the ZX. So yeah, another random fact about Nintendo and Grand Theft Auto, which ties in perfectly to the random nature of our episode, as always. So let's have a look then. We're doing well here, Ewan. Let's have a look at question number 4. All right, here we go. Because this is a global thing. Most countries now have reality show. So, question number 4, Ewan. What reality show would you think you'd do well in?
Who's doing the editing?
Me.
Because the problem with reality shows is not, are you good at the reality show? It's what you do in the edit. There is a lovely episode, part of a TV show called Screen White by Charlie Brooker. And they talk about how reality TV could only happen with digital editing, because you have to take 24 hours worth of footage multiplied by however many cameras to get a half-hour clip show for the original Big Brother, for example. And it doesn't matter what you do with somebody in a Big Brother house. The edit can do whatever it wants. The edit can make you, if you glance over at a housemate, the edit can either make that one of friendship, one of romance, one of stalking, one of murderous intent. So I would be very, very reticent to hand over my public image to a reality TV show. So, which one would I be good at? Well, I'm going to twist the question. I would be very good at producing one that's only in audio. I wouldn't want to be a contestant. I think this comes back down to the podcasting and everything. So, I would want to work on the other side of it, because the craft of storytelling through reality TV, through editing, through presentation, that is where the real skill is. Something like Taskmaster, for example, which is I think that's pretty fair to say that's known relatively worldwide. So much of that value is in the edit. When, you're seeing the clips of the tasks being mixed together. For those of you who don't know, 5 panelists are given a task to do in a house. They do the task. It's usually something silly like make a cake and sit on it, fastest wins. And they come back and they watch it a couple of months later with a studio audience. They watch the edited clip and they all react to it. You and I know from podcasting that you can move a single breath. And sometimes we do, because we need to set up a rhythm in an edit, or we're bringing together 2 thoughts. And it's just like, I know that's how it was said, but it just needs a little bit, it needs another 0.4 of a second. There's a gasp from here 5 minutes ago. I'm just going to lift that up and put it in there. And it's utterly seamless if you're good at what you're doing. Now, yes, a little bit of Dunning-Kruger, but I have been doing podcasting and audio editing for a fair bit. So I think it would be a reality TV show that's not on TV, that's on radio, that's on podcast. And I would want to be the editor, the producer, working behind the scenes, lifting out those stories, finding out about these people, a bit like what we're doing here with 5 questions. Because isn't 5 questions a reality TV show? Can we boil down the essence of what we're doing here to Survivor or Big Brother or Taskmaster or anything? TV entertainment is all about storytelling, and I always love to credit myself as being a storyteller. So the show that I would think I would do the best in is the one where I can tell the story.
Now, what I do like about that is, as you mentioned, you're flipping it and you're making it audio, which is your expertise, your passion, and where you can really guide the story. I know, like, there's a big push we were talking about in the green room before we came on to record the episode. I know there's a big push, at the moment anyway, for a lot of creators to go to video first as opposed to audio first. And that's fine. If that's what you want to do, have at it. And if you do it well, good for you. Love it. But I do find that sometimes video first can struggle to make the transition to audio, because your video, it's a visual medium, obviously. And what you can see happening isn't always what a listener can see or hear, not see, is what a listener can hear happening. If people were talking about, oh, look at this lovely decoration behind, Steve or whatever. What's the challenge there for, let's say you were to make this reality TV stroke audio only podcast. So reality podcast, I guess. What would be the challenge that you feel switching from what would typically be a TV, first approach or a video first approach, where you can see, you mentioned it yourself, the editor can make a look be friendly, flirting, playful, demonic, nasty. How would you transfer that to audio only?
I think you have to look back at history, because essentially what you're doing is a soap opera. So you are doing, again, this is a reference that either 100% of listeners will get, or they will just go, what are you going on about? You're essentially trying to do The Archers, which is a Radio 4, which was originally, of course, the home service, here in the UK, of a soap opera based in the village of Ambridge, farming, but essentially a soap opera. So that is what you're doing. The twist is, of course, you're doing it on material that is being generated in real time by your cast. And it depends on the story you want to tell. So, for example, you might want to do a sort of teenage focused and the pressures that they're going under just during their life, for example, whether they're going through exams. So you might want to do an exam. So, there's going to be a different flavour to that. For example, if you decide to follow 6 people who are going through grief, for example. And for those of you who aren't aware, the Carrie Ed Lloyd podcast, the Griefcast, absolutely fantastic listening. Go find the archive of it. That tells you a different story. Are you doing this with them staying mic'd up all the time, or are you doing it through an interview base? Look, personally, I would be doing it through an interview base. It's like, what happened today? Tell me what happened today. So it would come back as multiple interviews going through. So there's probably a complicated media university term for that one, but I would probably bias towards something like that. I would want to choose people who are already going through a journey, so you've got a natural storyline that you can build on, whether that is going to be uplifting or depressing. Let's just take those, for example. Whether it makes you think, then it's that. So, what is, we're coming back now to that question of what is reality. Is it a group of people? Is it a single person? Is it you have to see their lives? Is it they talk about their lives? What would the sponsors be interested in? Probably has to, unfortunately, come into that conversation as well. So what would it be? I mean, look, I've come up with podcast ideas that have never made it past That Would Be Fun stage. I did just during the last half of lockdown, I did a podcast called My Cat's Tale. And question 1 was, tell me about your cat. And that was it. We would talk for half an hour about one person's cat. Now, was that reality audio podcast? Yes, it is. Is it about cats? Yes. Was it hosted by David Tennant? No, so it didn't go any more than a year. It depends on what you want to do. And the delights of doing it as podcast is you don't need to find a huge audience. You don't need to find tens of millions of people tuning in every night. You need to find, if you want a really big number, 5,000. If you can find 5,000 people, and that people are starting a podcast, if you don't have that sort of star power energy to go with, that takes a bit of time to build up. But it would be something like that. It would be those lines of staying honest with minimal editing, which is probably why I'd want to do it in the interview format after they've done something. Because every time you cut with an edit, you're taking away some of the truth. And if you look at reality TV nowadays, there's a huge amount of editing. There's a huge amount of cunning, which means they get further away from the truth and further towards a story that is pre-written by the cast. But not by the cast, by the crew. I wouldn't want that. I'd go the other way. I would want to be as close and inside as possible. I think I'm describing something that is called a documentary.
No, I like that, and I love that you went so deep into that to explain exactly how it would work and why it should be that way. And I agree. I feel as much as it's fun for TikTok, Instagram reels, etc., I'm sure my age, because nobody probably watches Instagram Reels these days. But as much as people, veer towards that short-term content and really, that quick fix, that quick dopamine hit, it does take away, because now you're trying to make that perfect little 30-second, 60-second snippet for clicks, views, etc., as opposed to really just letting a story breathe. And, I love the fact that you mentioned the edit can take away from that. You've got to be really careful that you don't take away from the essence of what a conversation was about, because that does ruin and spoil. I also love the fact that you mentioned the Archers there. Now, I'm of an age that I remember the Archers. I know what you're on about. And it's funny that you mentioned Billy Connolly earlier, because one of my favourite skits of Billy Connolly, of many, is when he's on about we should change, because our national anthem, or the British English national anthem, whatever way you want to look at it, is so dull. So when you go to the Olympics, we've already lost, because all these other countries have got these grand, trumpet-laden national anthems, and we've got this God Save the King or Queen or whatever. We should replace it with the Archers theme, and we're just like marching along, parumping to the Archers theme.
This is what a sketch I'm familiar with. It's quite an early one. It's before 1985, 1986, and that Five Nations season with Scotland playing rugby against England. Because now, of course, Scotland has Flower of Scotland. Now, Scotland actually doesn't have an official national anthem, but there are various adoptions. Quite a few people still go with Scotland the Brave. But essentially, the rugby fans chose Flower of Scotland, and that's become Scotland's anthem. And if anybody hasn't heard a Scottish sports crowd joining in the anthem, go Google Euro Scotland anthem. When it opened up in Germany with the Euros, and Scotland was drawn to do the opening game, and the anthems come up, and every Scottish fan will sing. And I don't mean in a sort of stand up, put your hand on your heart, because you need to do the Pledge of Allegiance and you need to sing the anthem every morning. I mean sing. I mean that emotional core and depth. And yes, the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland does have God Save the King, but we have Flower of Scotland, and we are Scotland. And at that point, it hadn't been chosen. It hadn't been played. That moment at Five Nations where Flower of Scotland kicked off, and basically England lost the game of rugby beforehand because we sang the enthusiasm out of them. We have that anthem now, Billy. We have that strength and power, and we are known for it. We're still rubbish at sports.
But we've got a damn good national
We're good at curling. There are some sports that Scotland is good at. We're probably some of the best. Canada, Scotland at the Winter Olympics is the curling final. Yes, please. I'll watch that. Thank you very much.
No, I hear it. And it reminds me, I think it was 1990. That was a Grand Slam game between Scotland and England when normally you run out onto the pitch, right? And it was at Murrayfield, so obviously it was like the home crowd. So England's players ran out on the pitch as expected, and then the Scottish team marched out when Flower of Scotland, the crowd was just, and I think at that moment, it almost sensed that we've got this. This is our day. So I completely hear you, and that's just giving me a little bit of tingles in it. So thank you for bringing that back to as a memory.
It always surprises me that nobody at the Super Bowl does that as well. If, you have all the pomp and the circumstances, they run out, yay, yay. And I think if you'd just taken one of those teams and you'd just marched out, stood on the halfway line and looked at the other team, they would just be, what are they doing? What's going on? If anybody's seen like the New Zealand All Blacks, they start playing the game of rugby long before the whistle blows, and I think anthems play a huge part in that.
Well, I agree, 100% agree, and I love that question to kind of almost ease us out of your time in hot seat. But we do have one more for you, so let's have a look at what one we're going to take you home with. All right, let's go with this one. Question number 5. Do you think you would survive a zombie apocalypse?
It would answer one of my favourite questions for pondering, though. So, let's say, right, you get zombified. Whatever the technical term is, you have become a zombie. if you're pregnant, does the baby become a zombie?
Well, that it kind of almost answered in season. Was it season 2? It was one. It might be season 1 actually. So The Last of Us TV show based on a video game, the same name. It showed the main or one of the main characters' mother. So Ellie's the young lady in the TV show game, and she's with a guy called Joe. They're trying to get Ellie to somewhere where she's meant to be like the cure for the zombie apocalypse. Her blood is immune, and the reason that they showed that was they had a spoiler alert. Stop listening here if you've not seen it. But the reason that she was that is it showed it at the start as her mum, as she was given birth, was attacked by a zombie and was bitten, and that mixed the bloods up, and that's why she became this immune person, if you like. So I'm not sure if you become a zombie. Probably not a zombie, but maybe there's a mix of human stroke zombie there, if that makes sense.
But that's during birth, yeah? Now, I've not seen Last of Us, but that's during a birth, yeah?
That's correct, yeah.
Okay, right, so that doesn't matter, because what I'm getting at here is while you're in the womb and the blood placenta barrier is still in effect, that is weakened during birth. So I would say, well, things are going to break down there on both sides. So, no, I don't think that answers the question at all.
Okay, that's fair comment. Swine.
Oh, trust me, I've been through lots of these ones. It's the same question about vampires as well. If you get turned into a vampire and you're pregnant, does the baby become a vampire? What if the baby becomes a vampire and you don't? Is that possible? And if that's the case, what happens? Oh, lots of funs on that. Surviving a zombie apocalypse. Well, it kind of depends on what you need. It kind of depends on how long the zombies are going to be around. It depends if they're fast or slow zombies. Lots of things. For example, if zombies are dead, does that mean that there's no living bacteria in them? And if that's the case, then they've only got the energy that they've got when they die, which means you've only got to get through about 3 days. So if the question is, can I hide from the world for 3 days? Pretty sure I can get a boat. Pretty sure I could go up a mountain. Pretty sure I could go into the middle of a football stadium in County Meath, because nobody would think of going there because County Meath can't play football. So, can I survive 3 days of a zombie apocalypse? Yes. Can I pronounce it? No. But that's fine, because I would want to be really, really quiet while doing it. Longer term, then there are bigger questions about infrastructure. So let's take power, for example. How is power going to be generated? Are we going to have to rely on portable generators? Are there going to be people who can still run nuclear power plants? Are there zombies? There's the other thing. Will zombies still want to go to work? Is it just like, oh, we're going to eat. Okay, you've eaten. Now what are you going to do? I was making a nice model Spitfire from an Airfix kit. Well, you're a zombie. That doesn't stop you carrying on doing modelling. Oh, yeah, I'll go do that then. Tell me when you're hungry. We'll get you some more food. Oh, right, fine, fair enough. The idea that zombies are constantly going and constantly eating, I could disagree with. Because, as I said, they're dead. And if they're dead, nothing works. And if nothing works, how do they process food? Do they eat food and it just goes all the way through? They just leave trails of tiny mashed up bits of human behind them. If that's the case, yeah, my 3 days are still good. So in my science fiction world, either A, zombies all die out after 3 days. I know it's a bit H.G. Wells' War of the Worlds, but yeah, bear with me. Or the second one is, yes, there are zombies, but they don't have an insatiable lust for food. And even if they did, we've got Manjaro now. What happens if you give a zombie Manjaro? Oh, I'm not hungry anymore. Oh, what do you want to do? Race cars. Great. You want to put a seatbelt on? No, don't be silly. I'm a zombie.
It's an interesting fact. I've never thought of it that way, to be honest, mate. And you're 100% correct, obviously. It's like...
No. I only sound 100% correct.
Well, okay, yeah, that's okay. You've like convinced me.
Yeah. I can say things with confidence and they will make sense until somebody moves on to the James O'Brien podcast next in their feed, and then they go, hold on a minute, he was talking rubbish, wasn't he? Yes. So was Ewan. Yes.
No, I like it. And like you say, though, you're dead, so you're not going to be hungry, right? So, I don't even know why the original reason to eat brains came about. I'm sure it must have been George Romero's classic 60s, early 70s, Day of the Dead, Dawn of the Dead movies that came out and happened. It's funny though, you mentioned about how fast are they and how clever are they, etc. There's a little cartoon, like meme kind of thing or whatever, that I saw just the other week there, actually, last week even maybe. And it was about if the zombie, how to survive the zombie, or not survive, but if the zombie apocalypse, or if you get attacked by zombies, here's how to beat them. And basically you're just in your house, but all the way around your house is like a moat of treadmills. You know, so if you try to get the zombie on the treadmill, they're going nowhere for days, right? They're just running. And it's the same idea. It's like, as you say, there's no real reason or rhyme to zombies, really. And if there is, why can't it be normal after that? Building an aeroplane, you know, taking a dog a walk. Is a dog a zombie as well? Are they real? They're going to try eat the zombie bones, whatever. So, yeah, I'm going to start thinking that way if I get asked about zombies and such as. But I would recommend watching The Last of Us. Certainly season 1. Season 2 I wasn't quite as sold on. Season 1, really, really good.
To slightly paraphrase Adam Savage, I reject your zombie apocalypse and I replace it with my own.
And for anybody that doesn't know, Adam Savage, I will link to that in the show notes, obviously. One of the cool things that episode show notes do, they give you all the links and details about everything that your host and your guest is speaking about. So always check them out. But I like that. And I feel it's a nice way. That sensible answer is a nice way to ease out your time in the random question hot seat, mate. But it's only fair because I've had you in the hot seat for almost an hour now. It's time to hand over the question asking baton to you.
Do you know how difficult it is trying to come up with one question?
That's why I use a random generator, mate.
No, 5. I'd be good with 5, probably, because I could do a structure and a story. And I have been thinking about this one. So I've decided to go back to my favourite question. And it's one that I tell people when they ask how to do interviews and podcasts or YouTubes or whatever. It's one that I've used, certainly going back, according to family mythology, till I'm about 4 or 5. So it's just like, okay, let's go with that one. Let's not try and do anything sneaky. Let's not try and go, oh, I've read your LinkedIn and I see that you once finished third in a Crufts lookalike pedigree chum contest. What about that one? I'm not going to do any of that. Although I will ask you that one when we get back into the green room. Right?
Have at it.
Why?
Just why, yep.
That's the question. Why?
Why? And I've got to come up with a thing about why.
You've got to answer the question. I think that's the rules of the podcast.
That is the rules of the podcast. Okay, why? Let's see. Why not?
Oh, somebody's looking at the time and going, I want to get this under an hour.
Why not? No, I think it's like anything, mate. It's like, that's a really, obviously, open-ended question. It could cover anything. But I think at the end of the day, it's why not? Why ask that girl or guy out? Why not? Why put that thing in your mouth when it tastes horrible? Why not? I've never tried it before. Why jump out a perfectly working aeroplane with just a piece of material on the back of you to keep you alive? Why not? Never done it, never will. I'm not that brave. But I think that would be my answer, mate. It's like, unless there was like a specific why this, why that, or whatever, I think it always comes back to why not, because there's always a reason to do or say something, and it could be personal beliefs, could be political beliefs, could be giving a voice to voiceless, thinking the current times, etc. I think it comes down to why not. That would be my answer, I think. And I hope that's okay, because that's such a good open-ended question that no one has ever come up with before.
Yay!
What would yours be, out of curiosity?
I have asked that so many times. It was one of the questions my next door neighbour when I was growing up always said, oh, here comes you and why. Because I would just go, what are you doing that for? Why are you doing that? Why are you doing that? Why are you doing that? And it is a curiousness. It is an instinctiveness. I think it's just a sort of general question to just ask yourself, anybody around you, why are you doing something? Why did you do that? Why are you making that decision? Why am I doing that thing? I think it is a lovely encapsulation of the human condition. It can be a very personal question. It can be a wonderful question in a group. It's, as you said, it is open-ended. But it is just something that will always advance what you're doing. As you've seen here, one word, why, led to your answer. Why not? And then, yes, I can see what you've done. I've done this long enough. You've thrown the same question back at me. That's fine, because it allows, why? It advances conversation. And if it advances conversation, it advances understanding. And if it advances understanding, then it advances compassion and empathy. It advances emotion. It advances togetherness. We are, as a species, so shattered, so broken. And the challenges that are facing the world are immense. And the only way to solve those challenges are for people to band together, to ask why, to come up with sensible, well thought out answers, emotional answers, to challenge people, to not only hear the answer to the question why, but to also go, why? I mean, if you stop going me or this in any of the circumstances that are happening today and just go, why? And then challenge the answer. And the easiest way to challenge a why answer is just to do it again. Why? Why are you doing this? And that is how we evolve. That is how the human condition grows. That is how as Douglas Adams said, we get out the trees. That is how we get digital watches. That is how we make this world a little bit better than how we found it. And if everybody does that, if everybody makes one tiny positive change by simply going, why? Well, why should you do that? Because the world will be in a better place, and you will leave it in a better place for the next generation. And then they will ask why. Why did they do that? Then why am I not doing it for the next generation? And that will cascade down the years. You and I, this podcast is probably going to be gone in 10 years. It'll be undiscoverable in 50, and our names will not be shining there in 100 years. But the impact we make and the impact that cascades down, that is why we do this. That is why I do this. This is why we create art or jobs or science or creativity. It's because we want to take another step forward. And everybody who tries to take it a step back should be challenged at every single moment. And they should be said, why? And if they do not come up with an answer, you challenge them again and again and again. And that is how we get out of the hole that we're in right now.
I think that is a fantastic place to close this episode off, mate. If that doesn't give listeners a reason why to check out your stuff that we're going to ask about right now, then there's no reason, because that's the perfect reason. And I love that explanation. And as a dad, I've got two kids. I mentioned it earlier. I've got two teen kids that I do have concerns about what the world's going to be like for them. When I was a young man's age, like when I was in my early 20s, what's it going to be like for them in, say, 10 years' time? And I think that's perfect, mate. I think that, asking why and challenging back, like you said there, is perfect, and a perfect way to end this time on the hot seat. So I appreciate the question, and I super appreciate your extended answer when I cheated a little bit and asked why not, but asked you to expand on that. So Ewan, for people that want to know more about you and hear more of your thoughts like this, hear more of your stuff on Eurovision, baseball, maybe read your blog, because I know you have a blog that you post now and again. Anywhere that you've got awesome, cool stuff going on, where's the best places to either catch up with that, listen, read, or even connect with you, mate?
This has been my weak spot for all of the time. I'm great at creating stuff. Getting the proper marketing behind it, that's a little bit more tricky. So the obvious place to start off with the blog, which is ewanspence.co.uk/blog. There's a bit there for social media links, so that will link you to the Blue Skies, the LinkedIn, the YouTube, the other sites and stuff. So that's how you would get in touch with me. In terms of the projects that we have mentioned, let's run down those just now. So eurovisioninsight.com or escinsight.com, but both URLs will work. There's over 1,000 podcasts there. Most of them feature me, but it is essentially a collective, so you will find other voices going on in there. In terms of baseball, two places I'll give you there. youtube.com/baseball Scotland and some number. Search for Baseball Scotland on YouTube. It's the Scottish Amateur League. We started to do YouTube and streaming 2 years ago. I had to rapidly teach myself how to be a baseball commentator, so you will find my efforts there. it's the off season, so I'm carrying on doing baseball commentary by commentating on historical games from the 40s, 50s and 60s, because we still have the paper record of what happened, so I can pretend to be a commentator from the 1940s. Welcome, the Gillette Safety Razor Blade Company welcomes you to Kaminsky Park and today's, and all of that stuff. That's classicbaseballradio.com, or again, search for that on Spotify, podcasts, and YouTube as well. I mentioned the Cats podcast. So a lot of my older podcasts that are kind of like only running intermittently, you'll find at thepodcastcorner.com. My Cat's Tale is in there. The Edinburgh Festival Fringe podcast is in there. That only really runs in August because that's when the Edinburgh Festival is on. And there's another couple more going in there. But yeah, if you get the social media links from the blog, if you just search for ewanspence.co.uk on Blue Sky, that's probably the place for the immediate thing. Yeah, I'm about. Not very visible, which is a shame.
Like a good Scotsman, you're about. You're not just here, there, you're everywhere, mate. So
just stand in a room at a web conference and shout, why? And I'll go, oh, that's me.
That's you, and go say hello. But as always, I will leave all these links in the episode show notes. So whatever podcast app you're listening on, or you're even listening to this on the website, just check the episode show notes out. It will link out to the good and average stuff that Ewan is doing, so be sure to check the notes out. So again, Ewan, thanks for taking the time today to appear on the 5 Random Questions hot seat.
Lovely. Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for listening to 5 Random Questions. And if this was your first time here, feel free to hit follow and check out past episodes. If you enjoyed this week's episode, I'd love for you to leave a review on the app you're currently listening on, and if you know someone else that would enjoy the show, be sure to send them this way. It's very much appreciated. Until the next time, keep asking those questions.